views, opinions, and content of this show are those of the host, guest, and callers. They do not necessarily reflect those of Local Matters Broadcasting LLC, its owners, partners, affiliates, assigns, or heirs. Having said that, it's now time to say good morning, St. Johns County. Welcome to the weekly radio show of the St. Johns County Council on Aging, better known in our community as the COA. We are your local nonprofit agency who for the past 51 years has been leading and advocating for the dignity and independence of seniors and responding to their changing needs. I'm Brian Robinson, Program Director for COA, broadcasting to you live from the studio of WFOI 102.1 FM, your local radio station for news, sports, and talk. Before we get into our show, let me remind you, as I do each and every week, if you have a question, comment, or a suggestion for a radio show topic, or if you would like to enter a chance to win 100 cases of Bazooka bubblegum that expired in 1977, well, you can send that email to radio@coasjc.org. Again, that's radio@coasjc.org. And if you have questions during this morning's show, I do have my email up in front of me, so I will be monitoring that. And so, again, send that email to radio@coasjc.org. Joining me this morning is St. Johns County Sheriff Robert Hardwick. Good morning, Sheriff.
Good morning, Brian. How are you doing this morning? Thanks for having me on again.
Absolutely. I always love having you on. Like, you are one of my favorite guests to have in the studio because I know that I'm not going to have to pull answers out of you. Like, you have the gift of talking. So I am excited about our interview. But what I wanted to do is just start off. And, maybe there's somebody that just moved into the county. They're tuning in. They know absolutely nothing about you. So why don't you just kind of tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so it's hard to talk about yourself when, I've just been blessed in life to be married to a beautiful woman. And, of course, before you and I went live today, talking about some things in my life that truly changed in who I am and make me a better leader. So, again, met my high school sweetheart, Kendall. Probably most important thing in my life, besides God, is that met her in St. Joseph Academy right here in St. Augustine, Florida. And 34 years later, we're married. We have two amazing sons in our life. Cole is our oldest son. He's 34. And he's actually works for a company called Patagonia out in California. He went to Florida State, went to law school, and he's out there in California with his beautiful fiancee who he met at Florida State, and she works for Patagonia too as well. Our youngest son, Brett, is 29 years old. He went to Flagler College like my wife and I. We're all alumni, and he met his beautiful wife, of course, Annie, and they gave birth to their first grandbaby about a year ago. He is a pilot. He flies for the Florida National Guard. He's a full-time Army Chief Warrant Officer in charge of counter-drug aviation operations. And then my beautiful daughter-in-law, she's actually a licensed clinical social worker. She has a passion for our inmate population. She's been working there for a long time. She became our director of mental health under a contracted company under the previous sheriff. And she now, of course, is at home with her beautiful daughter and my granddaughter, Ellie Grace. As far as myself, again, Flagler College, got my master's degree at Barry University in administration. And then my wife and I, again, just have service and selfless service as community. I've been a high school football coach or a youth coach here in St. Johns County for 28 years. I served in the United States military, active duty first, and then got out, of course, and then became a Florida National Guard member, where I served up until 2018 and retired with 25 years of service. I was a black hat drill instructor at the Officer Candidate School when I retired. Multiple combat tours, truly blessed. I learned so many things from good leadership and bad leadership during my multiple deployments with the military, both when I was active duty and National Guard service. Service to our community, of course, has really been in law enforcement. I came out and served in the prison system. I worked at Department of Corrections down at Tomoka Correctional Institution when I came out of the military, active duty. And then I went to the Flagler County Sheriff's Office, still working in corrections there. And I know I wanted to try the road, and I wanted to be a patrol officer or a deputy sheriff. Went over to the road at St. Augustine City Police Department under Bill Robinson. He was a phenomenal man. Served there for a long time and worked in investigations. I was blessed to serve in the career criminal unit. Started it up under Steve Fricky back then. He was my sergeant. Working with Maureen Christini, a beautiful lady who since has passed away from cancer, but she was my supervisor at the state attorney's office. I remember it like it was yesterday, but they offered me a job in December of 2002 and said, hey, we want you to come work for us and run our investigations in St. Johns and Putnam County, in Flagler County. So I took the job, and next thing you know, December 27th of 2002, I get a phone call and said, hey, you've been activated, you're going to war.
Oh, boy.
So while I was physically in deployment mode and heading over to the country of Jordan, they offered me a job, and I took it. And Mr. John Tanner, back then the state attorney, swore me in, and I became an investigator with the state. 15 months later, I came home in 2004, and I came home a changed man, but I came home for a better person after a lot of things that happened to me when I was knocked down. But anyways, I became the assistant chief in charge of the state attorney's office. I fell in love with death investigations and became the homicide assistant chief, basically, for the state attorney's office for all 4 counties. And then eventually the St. Augustine Beach Police Department came open. And a friend of mine named Angela Corey, who was the state attorney in Jacksonville at the time, she called me and said, hey, why don't you apply for that and test your resume? And I did. 224 applicants applied to be the St. Augustine Beach Chief of Police. After 224 applicants went through the whole process, that commission blessed me with being their chief of police for 8 years over there. And we did amazing things with an amazing crew. And then the stars lined up, and I ran for sheriff here in St. Johns County. I'm on my 2nd term, and here I sit today. And I'm surrounded by people that are better and stronger than me, including my wife and my family. But the amazing men and women of the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office, whether they're sworn and non-sworn, have just done amazing things. So that's the 5-cent version of a phenomenal, blessed career that God has given me as your sheriff in St. Johns County.
Well, thank you for all your years of service, both in the military and in law enforcement. I know, our law enforcement officers, they're not in it for the money, much like those of us who are in any type of organization serving people. You're in it because of you're passionate about the cause of what you're serving. And so big shout out to you and everybody that works, in your department, and all of the law enforcement officers out there. I had an uncle who was in law enforcement for our local police department back home in Weirton, West Virginia. And my dad, of course, was in the Marine Corps. So I've always personally had a heart for those in military and law enforcement. So thank you for your service.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate you. But these partnerships and relationships that we share, Brian, you know this as well because you work for an amazing organization. And I have the privilege of serving on there as a board member there's so many organizations in St. Johns County, profit and not-for-profit, that we have a great thing going on here. And I don't think the rest of the country actually, I'm not sure if we humble ourselves sometimes and go, the rest of the country does not have it like this. And I think you know that, and I do, because you've been around like I have and not just been in one location. But the other thing too as well, you go into this profession and you go into the careers like you talked about, not-for-profit and ministry. You know that you're not going into it for the money. And I have to remind my agency members, it's like, as much as I fight for you to get better benefits and money, if you're in it for the money, you're in the wrong profession.
Absolutely.
Like, well, Sheriff, you make X amount of dollars. I never started making this X amount of dollars, and I never had the dream of being a police chief or sheriff. I just wanted to serve my country and serve my community. So here I sit today, and I made a comment to you before we went live. We're financially stable in our life, but we went through some hardships just like you did, and I'm glad I did because it made me a better leader of who I am today, and it made me a better father and, of course, a husband to my beautiful bride. So, again, I appreciate having me on this morning, and truly excited to speak about the Council on Aging and amazing things we do together.
I want to jump to some of the different programs that you offer for the elderly, because at Council on Aging, that's who we're serving. And as you mentioned in the last segment, there's such great partnerships that we have in St. Johns County. And, we're very fortunate to have all these different relationships that we have with other nonprofits, but then also that we have with the sheriff's office and other organizations and agencies within St. Johns County that help us to better serve our seniors, right? So there's a lot of things that we do, but there's some great programs that you do. And so I just kind of wanted to walk through some of the different things that I know about and that are also listed on your website. And if you could just give a little overview of each one. And the first one is Safe Track, and I understand that it's soon to be called Project Lifesaver.
Yep, absolutely. So, we're rebranding it a little bit, but keeping the same concept. And, this project here, of course, it's been going on for a long time. But again, when I became the sheriff here, we wanted to kind of put an exclamation point behind it. We wanted to move it under the office of the sheriff. We had some retirements, as you know, when I became the sheriff in my first term. And now, closing on the end of my 5th year now, we've made a lot of changes in there. So Robin Plant runs the program directly out of the office of the sheriff. And this is a program that's been going on nationally for a long time. But again, we're one of the only local programs here in Northeast Florida. But of course, it's a wristband or a watch basically that's worn by, of course, a person that has been deemed, basically they need additional assistance with their family members. It can be dementia, of course. It can be autistic. It can be some other underlying, whether it's a TBI or PTSD issue. We have just under 30 participants in that program. The youngest age is 7 years old, and the oldest, I think, is 90 years old or 89 years old. Of course, so they go through like a little bit of a criteria, meaning they go through, Robin Plant kind of goes through kind of a little bit of a, hey, do you meet the variables available, of course, that we can provide these services to you? If the family, of course, can afford it, we offset it with some basically offsetting the cost of the bracelet. Setting the cost of the actual program that is run, but we usually don't ask for any money at all. And it happens at a first response, basically, of a deputy sheriff usually going to a house, responding to a missing person, dementia again, Alzheimer's again, they're wandering, of course, nonverbal. We get a lot of that too as well. We identify them. Robin triages it, and we actually put them in the program, and then they become a participant of Safe Track, like we talked about. So just a rebranding of that right now through the national program. So we're super excited about that as that program, again, continues to. We have a call-out team of 9 members on the team right now. So when something happens and our deputy sheriffs say, hey, we have a Safe Track participant, they're flagged in the system, we automatically activate the Safe Track system or Safe Track participants, and they come out like a call-out team.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So I just want to commend, your staff, the officers. Part of it, I think about a month ago, my wife and I were out on a walk. We live off of Old Moultrie, and somebody, an elderly man with dementia, somewhere in the Old Moultrie area, had wandered off. And so my wife and I were out on a walk, and we're seeing, deputy vehicles coming, and then there's a helicopter flying above, and I'm like, oh my gosh, something serious is really going on, right? But then we could hear an announcement from the helicopter, and they're calling out the person's name, saying, and I couldn't quite completely understand it, but it was kind of along the lines of, mentioning this person's name, and your family is concerned about you. Please come out. And we want you to be safe and so forth. And that was just phenomenal to see that taking place. To find this gentleman, which we learned later on Facebook that he was found and he was safe and so forth. So just a big shout out to the officers involved in that.
We've come a long ways with technology-based policing, too, and that involves, of course, additional things besides a traditional patrol car, where we're beating down the bushes, basically, trying to find somebody that has wandered off. And, we here in St. Johns County, I think you know this, Brian, that we've really invested, of course, in technology. That includes, of course, yes, we had a helicopter for a long time here, but it was an OH-58. It was an old Bell helicopter that was used in Vietnam in 1960s. And now we've come to technology-based policing here, and our helicopter, picking up that heat source. Because, technically people, and I hate to say this, but I'm just going to be realistic, is, people that wander sometimes, especially autistic or young children, they attract to bodies of water. So same thing falls with elderly people, too, going to swamp areas and stuff. And the goal is to dump all these resources, drones, of course, additional deputy sheriffs, neighborhood canvases, reverse 911 calling, using our license plate reader to see if they drove off somewhere, using the technology we talked about in our helicopter with our FLIR system and our heat source and our thermal imaging system, and get the loved ones back home where they belong. So, again, we just dump those resources in there. We have a lot of drones on patrol. We have a lot of pilots that are drone pilots on patrol. So that immediate, and also too, we share special relationships with St. Johns County Fire and Rescue. They're phenomenal men and women under Chief McGee, and we get together and we respond to just dump resources, and we've been very, very successful at finding these people, just like you said.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. I just enjoyed watching that take place, and then, of course, the outcome, just to know that he was found and he was safe and back home.
That text message I get where it says, basically we'll say, we have an 80-year-old person, or a 7-year-old, little boy, wandered off and parents can't find him. It's a sick feeling in your stomach.
Absolutely.
That we're going to do everything we can, because that crucial moments, you have to dump all the resources there on that person. And God forbid it's a criminal act, which is, of course, very minimal in St. Johns County. But you always have that sick feeling in your mind, like Tristan Bailey, like Haley Cummings out of Putnam County years ago. So, again, dumping those resources and finding these loved ones for these people is just relief, and it's glorious for us at the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office.
And so the Safe Track program would have helped in that situation even more so.
If they're registered in that program.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the next one. It's called CARE, which stands for Community and Advocacy Resources for the Elderly.
This is a program, and this kind of coincides with Council on Aging and what the mission, of course, and what Council on Aging truly does. However, sometimes us as deputy sheriffs and us as a large agency come upon people that just require a little bit of special TLC, whether the loved ones live up north or somewhere else, or even in the surrounding counties. But we have that elderly person, of course, in our jurisdiction. Linda Hancock, who's a longtime employee of the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office, is working hand in hand with that program with Sue Warrenberg under our community engagement team under TJ Williams, Sergeant TJ Williams. They have just done a phenomenal job. So we're identifying people that just require some additional TLC. Most of them are in the COA program one way or another, but also, too, we've identified them. And it's simply a house check. It's we bring them, of course, Thanksgiving meals. We try to just offset what you all are doing in Counseling on Aging because they've become special to the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office. So we bring them in for usually a yearly Thanksgiving or Christmas lunching or just, again, a little bit of TLC, going to the house, checking on them, knocking on the door, making a phone conversation. I will say a quick comment from Linda Hancock. She's a longtime resident here, born and raised in St. Johns County, Florida, 33-year veteran of the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office, and she retired my first year as sheriff. And I hate to see her go. She's a beautiful lady with a beautiful smile, with a big family here, and she came back to me about a year and a half ago saying, "Hey, Sheriff, I think I've had enough time in retirement. I just want to make sure I have plenty of time with my grandchildren, but what can I do?" And I offered this program to her, and she was kind of like, "It doesn't sound appealing to me." 2 weeks ago, she came and embraced me at our agency picnic, and Sheriff, she said, "I am in love with what you are doing with our seniors program here too as well." So again, just another program that we're trying to do with just people we run across in our profession and trying to just show that little bit of TLC and community involvement, community engagement, and making sure we're taking care of our people.
That's fantastic. And I so appreciate the love that you have for our seniors.
Yeah.
And it just shows in these type of programs
Sure.
that you have.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the next one, and we'll probably get interrupted by a commercial break here shortly, but that's the Seniors versus Crime Project. I've had them on the show a couple of different times. They've been coming to our senior centers to talk to our seniors, but tell our listeners a little bit more about that program.
This was a program actually started under Pam Bondi, our Attorney General's office, and it could have been even further back under McCullum when he was the Attorney General. But we had this program when I was the Chief of Police at St. Augustine Beach for St. Johns County, and we were running out of St. Augustine Beach as a much smaller agency. When I became the sheriff, and sometime I'm not sure what happened, but during my election or prior to, the program kind of went away and was not adopted by any agency in St. Johns County. So one of my top priorities when I took over as a sheriff just 5 years ago was to get this program back up and running in Seniors versus Crime. And you had to find the right people, and most of them are retired federal agents, state law enforcement, local law enforcement, and we had to find those people in there. Well, we found the right guy. Scott Harrington came into our lives. We got that program kicked back off here in St. Johns County again. We have office space for them. Of course, as you know, I'm very, very close with the former Attorney General, Ashley Moody. We were excited to get it up and going under her and then continue it under, of course, our Attorney General currently, James Uthmeyer, who I'm very close with too as well. So that program is up and running. The good thing about that program is sometimes, we in law enforcement I hate to say the word don't have time for civil, but sometimes civil wears us down and we're crossing that threshold and that boundaries of what we can or cannot do. Well, Seniors versus Crime kind of picks up that, basically that blank space or that area of question. Again, Scott Harrington, they have a bunch of volunteers and they're doing amazing things. Filling that gap of, civil, criminal, education, which you just said. And that's one important piece I forgot about. So again, they're kind of funded by, of course, our Attorney General, state of Florida, but they're really funded in-house by us because, of course, they have limited funding. So they have a home in southern St. Johns County at our South Regional Operations Center. They have office space down there, computers, under the direction of Sergeant Mike Malullo, who's one of our property crimes unit sergeants, and now under Lieutenant Robbie Robinson. So just some great things going on and a great partnership relationship. And they are getting a lot of people educated to avoid those scams. But these scammers, these criminals are relentless. They pick on the weak, but also they pick on everybody else too as well. So we're trying the best we can with that Seniors versus Crime partnership to educate, enforce, and also to help us out with investigative work.
Yeah, well, I'm very appreciative of the program, and so are the seniors.
Yep,
they have made lots of positive comments about it. So
Yes,
thank
sir.
you for doing it. The next one is called the Canine Scent Kit, which I think certainly probably comes in handy when the situation that I mentioned earlier with a senior wandering off.
Yeah, so hand in hand, of course, with all of our programs that we run with our seniors and our autistic, children too as well. So when we talk about, as young as 7 years old and as old as 90, the Scent Kit program is works hand in hand. These scent kits actually, when you actually get the scent kit, and we can give it to you for free, and basically if you have one of these people that meet the criteria, or if you don't, if you have a child, you're like, I just want to have this scent kit in my refrigerator and store it just in case. They last up to 10 years. Of course, and what it is basically a scent, just like it says, of basically a DNA swab or a swab of the mouth, or it could be, of course, some swabbings, or of course, some areas on the body and stuff. Like the kit walks you right through it. You store the kit yourself. We don't take it from you. And then, God forbid, of course, you call us and say, my loved one is missing. We immediately take that kit, of course, and our bloodhounds, our tracking canines actually use that to track the individuals. I will tell you this, under Deputy Melanie Merritt, she's got a gift from God. Her husband, of course, is a bloodhound handler, a sergeant in Putnam County Sheriff's Office. Melanie works for us. She runs our bloodhound unit. Her and Daisy May are probably one of the most successful dogs in the country. It's amazing what they do together. Star just retired. Star was under Nick Cooper. He was one of our bloodhound handlers, and Star now is retired and home with him until, of course, until her last day per se. But she retired based on age. We have a brand new baby that's actually just got here. Her name is Journey. She's in the process of being trained. She's assigned to Nathan Richardson, one of our new bloodhound canine handlers. So he'll have that little girl. And eventually that will be a certified bloodhound handler. Deputy Shaughnessy is another bloodhound handler. Unfortunately, his brand new dog did not meet the criteria, which is it's a very strict criteria, because these bloodhounds are finding human beings that are alive. And the criteria is all over the map. So these are not drug dogs. These are physically dogs that are smelling the scent of human beings that are alive and tracking them. So unfortunately, that dog did not make the cut per se through the training process. So that goes back to, of course, the vendor where they came from, and they usually repurpose it or adopt it out. But we're waiting for another dog to come back, which I believe we just found another bloodhound, and she'll come here to St. Johns County, the best home for any bloodhound unit. So super excited. Canine kits. Call the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office, contact us online, and we will get you a canine scent kit to, of course, keep on your loved one.
Well, a lot of great programs in place to help our seniors stay safe, keep them educated. So thank you for doing that. I just think it's phenomenal.
I just, again, once we talk about this, is I would love to take credit for this. No, I wouldn't. I'm not that guy. But my agency is surrounded with men and women that just do the right thing, and we set the standard, the tip of the spear, I call it, and they just love what they do. And we have been given a gift, and we don't take the gift for granted, whether it's a canine unit or a seniors versus crime unit, or it's one of our detectives working a seniors crime. So we're blessed, and we love to educate, but more important, we like to make sure it doesn't happen.
Exactly, yeah. Well, I tell you what, I mean, just knowing that all of these exist just makes me feel good about living here, and just makes me feel good for our seniors, right? Because for me, in my role at COA, and I've said this before on the air, I look at it as my opportunity to serve the generation that raised my generation.
Totally agree.
Right?
Yeah.
And you we're close in age, and so I'm sure feel the same way. And so, this generation that raised us, right? I mean, they educated us, or they served in law enforcement to make sure that we that we stayed alive,
Sure.
basically, right?
Sure.
The coaches and so forth. I mean, we just go down the list, but now they're at that age where they need somebody to be looking out for them,
Sure
right?
do.
And so that's how I feel about my position at COA, and I love the fact that you're doing all these programs, because I think that you feel that way as well.
Brian, I think one thing, is when you go to that Centurion luncheon every year that you host, this Council on Aging hosts every year, it's humbled my wife, and every year we went to that since, I can't remember how far back, when Kathy was running, of course, Council on Aging, we've been going to that event. And you go there and sit with a person that's 102 years old. They stand up to the Pledge of Allegiance. They're humble. They're beautiful. They wear their pearls there. Their hair's done, their makeup. They just are beautiful people. I think it quickly reminds us that we've got to take care of the ones that truly define this country, whether it's World War II veterans or whether they serve the country here stateside. I think we forget too often, but when you go to those Centurion luncheons, you sit there and get humbled, and if you don't get emotional, something's wrong with you. When a Navy SEAL veteran at 100 years old stands up to sing "God Bless America," it humbles you right away. But
Absolutely.
Again, as my mother gets older, she's 85 years old, and she's beautiful, but again, she is getting older. I remind myself, too, we got to take care of the ones that took care of us and put us here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Blessed.
All right. Well, let's shift gears here a little
Please.
bit, and we'll probably get interrupted by another commercial break. But you've been on our board now for about 2 years. So my next question is, what have you discovered about COA that maybe you didn't previously know?
As I've been involved in COA my entire law enforcement career, and it's something that I truly believe in because I know that it's a needed service, and I think. Like I said, my mom is getting to that age too as well, where I can't wait till she is being taken care of by COA because the amazing people and men and women that are down there like yourself. So, I've always been involved. As you know, I mowed lawns forever, of course, under the Cuts and Cares program. I think was what it was called back in the day. And we had a bunch of lawns on St. Augustine Beach. We took care of upwards of 20 sometimes, and as low as 10. No one knew who we were. We actually used undercover drug vehicles at the time to mow those lawns, but again, the Meals on Wheels has always impressed me. Those are people that work behind the scenes. They prepare meals every single day. You have volunteers every single day that go out and deliver these meals to people that are out there. So again, I'm just always humbled at what COA does, and I'm humbled to be on the board now.
So as you know, our executive director will be retiring at the end of this year or sometime into January. And I'm just kind of curious if you could provide an update on how things are going with selecting her replacement.
It's always difficult when you have a leader that retires, because you get, set in your ways, of course, with Becky Yanni. And, Kathy Browning, too, there's so many things since 1974 when Council on Aging, of course, came to light. And here we are today, of course, with our executive director, our leader, stepping out. And God bless her. I'm so excited for her. Becky Yanni's a phenomenal woman and phenomenal lady, and she's stepping out of here in January this coming year, 2026. And it kind of caught us off guard, on the board of directors. We have amazing chairs, right now with Dr. Todd Battenhorst. He's a phenomenal man. He gets it, understands it. We have brought some great members onto that board since I've been on the board of directors for just about under 2 years. So it's an interesting time, for us as we change because it's so important that we continue to grow in St. Johns County. Brian, you know this better than anybody else. You are seeing the population. We shifted for a little bit around the COVID time of a lot of youth, families with little children and stuff because working from home became the normal across America. And they moved to one of the best and safest, communities, I think, in the United States, coming to St. Johns County. Well, now you watch the pendulum has shifted backwards again, we're coming, a lot of elderly people, retirees are moving here. And we got to prepare the Council on Aging for not just the growth of St. Johns County, but the growth in the elderly of St. Johns County. You got to have someone, he or she, that has a 30,000-foot view of, hey, what do we look like 10 years from now? No, what do we look like right now, 2 months from now? Because that's how fast it's changing in St. Johns County. So I believe as being a board member, I'm not on the selection committee that is going to present the names to the board. I'm a big fan of you got to advertise and see what's out there. Because sometimes hidden gems are right under your nose in our community, but they didn't see the advertisement. And I hate to say that being so candid, but you got to see the advertisement. So again, what are we looking for? We're looking for somebody internally. Sometimes internally, and I don't know who the applicants are at this time. Sometimes the internal applicants are not the best applicants, and that happens in my profession so often. And they keep saying, why did they pick a sheriff from a little old St. Augustine Beach PD? Well, the little old sheriff from St. Augustine Beach PD had a lot more experience than all the other applicants because as a small chief in a small agency, you do all behind-scenes work that now my 20 staff members actually do to help offset that. So again, 6 facilities. It's been around since 1974. Lots of major programs. Our transportation was not even in the vision of St. Johns County until Council on Aging came along under Kathy Browning and put that vision out there. Now, that cannot go away, by the way. And I'm not sure anybody can afford to sustain that because it's ran so well, in my mind, under the Council on Aging. So we got to have a person that's a visionary. 6, facilities that are currently run. You got all kinds of things going on. Memory care is going to get bigger and stronger and more participants as our community grows.
Absolutely.
Meals on Wheels is the same thing. We're not, because we have people that can afford to live here, doesn't mean we do away with the 27,000 people that are at or below the poverty line. This person, he or she, has got a big responsibility. But I'm a big fan of, hey, we can strategic plan all day long. However, we have to say what is currently needed now that we can afford to run or what kind of partnerships out there. I hate the fact that COA is a true 501c3. They're always looking for money. They're beg, borrow, and steal, and I hate that fact. I wish it was one of those entities that we could just say, hey, here's $10 million. I don't know what their budget is, but here's $10 million. Go ahead and run it with no strings attached. It's hard to do. It's hard to fund, but they have hustled the entire time. So you have a manager, but you got a manager and a person that runs this that's got to find and surround themselves with a better, like I do. I would fail if I didn't have my staff and members of the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office, to basically support my mission and my vision. So again, I'm happy to be a part of this, but I hope we all sit down at the table and pick the right person that actually, with no hard feelings, that says you are the best person to run this agency as we go to the future.
Well, our thoughts and prayers are certainly with everybody that's on the board. I'm sure this is a big decision. It
is.
Bringing in the right person to allow COA to move forward. Last I checked, I think we have 175, 180 employees. That's a lot of employees that are, depending on the right leadership to come in. So
yeah, and I don't have the numbers of what is actually applied yet. I don't have no clue. We'll get at the next board meeting, the best of my knowledge. And I've kind of heard nothing besides just some private phone calls, of course, with people that reach out to me, recommending some people. I'm saying apply. So again, I would tell people that if you have the resume, but the most important, you can have the resume all day long, but you've got to have the heart for seniors. And this isn't about you, by the way. This is about people that have the heart and mind for seniors and taking care of them. And this is not about a paycheck, because it's not there.
Exactly. All right. Well, we've got a few minutes left. So my next question kind of focuses on what you've already talked about, and that is the fact that, St. Johns County continues to be one of the fastest growing counties, not only in the state of Florida, but in a recent article that I read, also in the entire nation.
Yeah.
So the population continues to grow, continues to age. We're going to need more funding to meet the needs of the seniors we serve. And so I guess, as the board of directors is having discussions, what are you kind of talking about to be able to address this issue?
Always looking kind of back, falling back on the question you asked me about the next executive director for the Council on Aging. They got to surround themselves with people that actually know that fundraising, capacity is an important part of this entire puzzle and piece. That being said, again, it's innovative. And of course, and I hate the word cutting, programs, because we can't afford it. We don't cut programs, we find out additional funding, and sometimes it's beating on the doorsteps of Tallahassee going, wait a minute, why is everybody else getting funding? I know last year was a bad year, but there's additional ways to, of course, get funding out there, or be innovative without funding to still do the programs with some partnerships out there too as well. So again, it's one of those concerns. We're a very wealthy community. We have a lot of people here in St. Johns County that have big hearts. As you know, Becky Yanni with the Dolores Weaver Foundation, funded a capital campaign project that she pulled off, which was phenomenal with her and her amazing staff. But again, it's those innovative ways in getting out there, and you got to educate the community to understand what Council on Aging is, because no one understands what it is until they need it. Or maybe people are maybe missing the opportunity to use Council on Aging and fund it because they don't know what it is and don't need it. So I think as you continue to push in northern St. Johns County, which is probably 65 to 70% of our population now here in the entire county. And as we push those services, demands are going to require that. But also, you have people that are sitting at home right now on a computer or reading a book, and they retired very wealthy by the gift from God, and they're waiting for someone to call and say, hey, look at this organization. Come see it. Come watch bingo, for goodness sakes, and see these amazing men and women that are there that serve this community and served our nation. And now they are of course, in memory care or just simply adult daycare, and see the things that they actually need to progress and move forward and take care of the people that, form this country and identified it.
Yeah. So, I've recently heard a story. So we've started what's called the St. Johns County Dementia Care and Cure Initiative Task Force. And it's something started by the Department of Elder Affairs. Mm-hmm. And so we recently started one for our county in April. And the idea is to make St. Johns County more dementia friendly. But one of the initiatives that we're doing is to try to create what's called memory cafes around the county. And basically a memory cafe is where somebody with dementia and their loved one come and they get to sit and socialize with others who are doing, living the same journey of life, right? And they might do, just socialize, or they might do like a game or whatever. And it's just a great environment because they're able to just kind of let down their guard, and they know that everybody there is dealing with the same thing. But anyways, they were telling me the story. This couple was there, and the wife who has dementia, she pretty much was non-communicative during the time until he says this. He says, "Watch this," and he starts to sing "You Are My Sunshine," and she lit up and started singing word for word. It's stories like that just say, okay, Council on Aging is something that you want to be involved in and something that you want to support.
You hit it, my friend. Thanks for having me on today.
All right. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next week, everybody.